due to some problem with my laptop's camera settings, but this should be fine. But slides are visible, right?
Yes, sir. You can do the
Yeah.
slideshow.
Yeah. I've started the slideshow.
Yeah, we are not able to see the slideshow, sir. You can do entire screen share. Then you
Yeah,
can
I
choose
think
that
that's what I had
particular.
done only this. Okay, so I'll do that. Yeah, because that is some. Oh,
Okay, so if you have any questions, you can use question and answer under activities, or you can raise your hand and you can ask your question, or you can keep your questions
so
towards the end also. Yeah.
so now is it fine?
Uh, yeah,
Hello,
yeah, now it's okay. Yeah, now we can see, sir.
is it going? Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So once again, welcome, and I feel privileged to actually uh, discuss with people who are working in a very interesting and exciting field of epidemiology and are looking at applying spatial data science into this field, which is required. Uh, I have gone through, whenever possible, I've attended the previous webinars, especially the last one, and other two, although I could not join for a full time, but I went through the YouTube recordings, and based on that, I have made certain changes in or adjustment into my presentation. Uh, Given my background, especially the computer science background and the title of the topic, this will sound too technical, probably boring also for you, but have some patience. And I have tried to omit as much as possible some gory details and avoided too much of technical terms, but still some terms which are important have been retained, and we will discuss. So even if there are something on slide, that doesn't mean I will go through that, but it is just for the purpose of completion or overall requirement. I have put certain things, and uh, we will actually. I have experience of GIS as such or spatial databases as such, right from the year 2000 when I was hooked onto it for when I was sent on a training at Indian Institute of Remote Sensing, one of the top remote sensing and GIS related training institute in India, which was actually supported by a institution from Netherlands. Typically, they had that program called National Spatial Data Management or something. Under that, they conducted a lot of training, and I worked over there for around 2.5 months. And given our background, I could learn a lot of things over there. And later on, I started practicing it here. Introduced a elective subject in GIS for my MCA students first, then for even maths and other students. Guided some projects with engineering students, final year engineering students, MTech students, and MCA. Sent some students outside again for project related to GIS. Did some projects also over here, and I have retained my interest in GIS, although it is not my daily subject as such, but out of passion and hobby. And when Dr. Nitin actually started this group, I was very happy to be part of it. We were also at university, Goa University. We were also having a very interesting program some years back. After that, I came. We were around three or four of us who were trained in GIS from various departments of Goa University, including computer science, from marine science, from geology, earth science, and so on, botany. So we started a online diploma many years back. I think probably 2008 or something, which was started under an initiative called UniGIS Consortium with the help of Salzburg University of Austria. And we were the tutors for those modules. So I was teaching Geo DBMS, that is the topic which I'm covering today, data part, and open data infrastructure, or SDI, which we call now. And this course was open for registration by international students. And we had typically students ranging from Sri Lanka to Pakistan to Gulf to Africa and almost all these developing countries. And it was a very good experience. A lot of material was shared. Somehow, I think that initiative has stopped, but I'm very happy to share for those who might be interested to know. Before I start into my topic, I think university is now serious in starting MSc in GIS and remote sensing from coming academic year. Actually, I don't know, probably they will start thinking of introducing it right from January. I'm not sure because even faculty positions are allowed are announced for recruitment. And at least by next academic year, under the national education policy, we are starting it. A separate school is looking it, but probably I may be also associated with. I'm not sure, and I'll be happy to be part of it. So these are the developments. Now, as I said, I had gone through the last three webinars also, and they were very interesting with full of case studies, examples, and gave a very good overview of what can be done in this field. My topic is slightly low level, as I said, looking at the lowest, like say, strata of GIS. And attempt, as I said, is not to make you master in this, and it's not possible within 1 hour. I'm although I've added a lot of things in my agenda or outline. I'm not sure whether I'll be able to cover all those, but given possibility, either someone else or I may discuss this topic in a later webinar if possible. So we will cover, as I said, the spatial data and attribute data in general. Then another thing which is related to all this, especially the spatial data, is metadata, describing what is there in our databases. Then there are two categories of data models. I'm not sure whether uh, some of you are aware. Most probably you must be aware that we have raster data and vector data models, and both have pros and cons. And we'll see at their uh, challenges and how they're implemented. Along with vector data models, another thing which is related is the topological concepts. We will discuss that, so your vector data model will become more meaningful. Uh, when we discuss this core data aspects, how do we store them and how do we process them? So there comes the role of the databases. So we have age-old concept of databases, especially the RDBMS, relational database management systems, and then we will see how this spatial data has been incorporated into this. I will not go into any specific database as such, and will avoid actual uh, any commercial software or even open source software based commands. We'll just discuss the operations. So along with database, you can't separate something called as SQL, because that is our bread and butter to access data from the databases or create databases also. So SQL, and within SQL, how a special SQL or what type of SQL operations which work on special data are there, because that is how at the lowest level we access this data. And then looking at this lower level, all these things, I'll just make a mention at the end about SDI, special data infrastructure, which actually does away with the requirement of knowing most of things for you as such as a user, and allows you to integrate, pull, and analyze or add your data and use someone else's ready-made data as part of SDI. And then we'll have any questions. So coming to uh, spatial data as such, uh, if you see this, which just asks you like if you want to color a map, or it could be like say a world map, countries. Suppose imagine each of these uh, 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 item or a polygon is a country. This was one of the fascinating question which is still open for debate. The question was how many colors are required so that you can uniquely, let's say, paint each of the country, and not to repeat this color for countries which are having sharing the borders, right? So if you see this picture, you will also see, and you can, I think, you can see that there are four colors which are used in this particular problem. It is by and large, it is four colors are enough for any map. Now, actually, this has nothing to do with my special data model as such, but as a motivating thing, uh, I've just uh, shown this to you so that you start thinking about what could be the reason. How do I then prove that whether it is four colors or whether it is five colors? This actually took many years for somebody to prove, and almost I think in 1974 or something, somebody came up with a proof that indeed four colors are required. And this was somewhere in 18th century. Somebody has spoken about this this particular scenario, and the proof is quite big. So we won't be discussing that. Also, it will be almost more than 300 pages proof, and they hope that some school kid will come one day and will provide a very concise one-page proof for that. But what happened as a result of this type of puzzle or conjecture is the whole new branch of something called as graph theory was started in maths. To answer this particular problem, then you have to take help of mathematical theory, operations, and so on. So this field called graph theory, which actually we were taught graph theory in MCA first year when I was doing my MCA, and we found it so interesting. Like to all these problems, like nearest neighbor, network analysis, short, what do you call it, the shortest route, which we see in our Google Maps and all those are handled through graph theory. So this type of situations actually create some sort of a new theory sometimes, and then the answers are sought. So I just wanted you to only keep that in mind so that we'll see next what actually or how later on it can be related, right? Now, another saying, I don't know whether our previous speakers have mentioned that, but when I started learning GIS, I forgot the name of the book, but one big fat book was there, and the first line which caught my attention, apart from it mentioned that GIS can be used to solve today's concerns which are faced by the world. That time, climate change word was not there, but environmental issues, poverty, population control, all those things were there. But now you see this. This is also again a loaded statement. 80% of data is special. So usually it is said in a manner in which they say that 80% of data which is processed by government or these local bodies is special. Need not be by everybody, all other corporates, but at least for government. Now, just like that coloring problem, map coloring, or say what you call graph coloring problem, there is a proof. Here, there is no proof. Nobody has actually given any data supporting this statement called 80% of data is spatial. But just to stress sometimes the importance of learning or using GIS, and more importantly, the various companies which market GIS products, because typically the commercial GIS software are very, very costly. If when we started using GIS, one of the market leader, and I think it is still the market leader, is ISRI, Environmental Systems Research Institute. They are like Microsoft of GIS, right? So, and they're they're hugely priced. Maybe it has come down now, but still open source is also available. But apart from the software, what is more costly means, rather than me saying this 80% data is special, what I would like to say more is 80% of work in GIS related analysis goes into only preparing the data first. Your analysis is then quick. Most of there are a lot of other tools available for you, but getting that data and putting it together. Now, if you see this picture, this has also been shown, and it is there in multiple slides on my multiple slides also here. Look at this. Imagine the real world, which is at the bottom here, right? And we are representing it. and you see some five different planar this uh, uh, images which are there. And if you put all of them together, imagining as if it is the olden days projector, we used to use transparencies, and on that we used to mark something. No, so if you consider each of these is transparency, and now put them together, that is called overlay, you will get something closer to the real world. It's a abstraction, but that means now if you see with in this particular space itself, most of the thing is spatial, related to space, related to location, related to land. Now imagine, as I said, 80% of work involved in GIS is preparing your data. Suppose I want to represent this real world. Now I need these one, two, three, four, five different types of maps to get them, and then preparing the holistic picture of this real world as a simulation or representing that in my model. Now imagine that work, getting it done. So how easy it will be for you to get customer data which is on top, where each customer is located, how from where you will get street data, from where you will get this parcels or plots data, from where you will get importantly elevation data, which is at what particular height and all, and from where, from TCP or from regional plan office, you might have to obtain a land usage data. Getting data, putting them together and working on the same, let's say, scale and resolution will be a big issue over here. So you can imagine how much work will be involved in getting this done. So that is what I'm saying, that 80% of the effort is in actually, and most of the GIS papers or conference papers which we see are actually describing this process, and the end result, like getting those conclusions, I may be wrong, but that is not much of a issue right now. So out of this special data that which we consider, what about the other part? Apart from the special data, means I want to represent park, I want to represent road, I want to represent all these, and then do something about it. But as I said, it is only 80% probably, or 60, 70%. So what of the rest of the data? So that data also is required, because see, a customer, when I say where a customer is located, I need to also have his name, his income, which are non-special. They are not related to space, but they are related to this customer entity who might be a point over here. And now I want uh, his name and other thing apart from his location, right? Again, streets, I need names of the street, and so many other aspects of that. Parcels, I want to know who is the owner of this plot, and what is the mutation number. All these things are required. Elevation, I need some number, date on which this was taken. All these issues are there. So that is what we call as attribute data or non-special data, which actually, like say, when we teach computer science, or when we teach our traditional database management paper course to student, most or almost 99% of what we teach is about using this type of data which is non-special, right? And whole world, lot of applications which are running today, databases are actually handling this data, and very few are handling special data. Now the usage has increased, but earlier it was almost like hardly 1 or 2%, like say, people are using special data, especially governments. For their all their policy making, they have to use this. Especially even say researchers, like say from your field, they require this. And in fact, this particular case study about the spreading of cholera has, I don't want to show that also, but I think that has highlighted that time, if you use mapping, what can be done, right? Now both these do not exist separately, right? As I said, here is a customer, then I also want to link his name and other things. So since this is non-special data, which doesn't require location, other aspect, one question will come to your mind, that how do I store or how do I process both these things? Probably the way we process and store special data is different. The way we store and process attribute data is different, but sometimes we have to use them together. Like I want to know where some customer Rohan Sharma is staying. I will give his name, which is not special. Using that, I have to locate his place. or where actually he's staying, and using that, then later on I can go and find out in which type of area he's staying, whether it is urban, whether it's rural, whether it's a farm, based on the land usage. So all these are related. So that means I have to go from spatial data to attribute data, from attribute to spatial. So this has to be linked. So that is natural and it has to be done. So we need to know how and why it has to be done. So you need to link the two types of data together to create information and facilitate analysis. That is understood. But is this enough? If I now segregate nicely, okay, the data which we handle in today's world is spatial and attribute. And by the way, since we are part of special data group, we are talking about special data. But what about some other type of data is also possible, which may not be special or which may also incur special. There is some, I have not mentioned it, not to complicate matter, like spatio-temporal. Along with space, along with location, sometimes the fourth dimension of time is also important. Like on which day I have recorded this particular temperature at particular point on a hill or something. So that is there, but right now let us not complicate. But apart from that, is there anything else which we need apart from the spatial data and attribute? So there is this concept of spatial or geospatial metadata. So actually, I will use only a term called metadata for this. So now I store data. Right now, we have not discussed what is the format and how it is represented. We'll come to that now next in few slides. But to describe what I've stored, like say whatever is this, suppose I convert and I represent them in some sort of a digital data and store them inside. How do I make sense of this data? How do I understand it? For that, to describe this, there is something called as metadata. So this metadata's role is quite important in today's this, and my last slide, which will talk about special data infrastructure (SDI), is again nothing but a sort of a open metadata which is available for everybody, right? So we need to define when I store something, just like if in your medical language, if you have some sort of a sample of some blood or whatever, you will be having some sort of descriptors for this, right? Those are called as metadata to understand that particular sample. So all those documents, whatever documentation you do to understand what is where GIS file, geospatial database, imagery, satellite imagery, all this, like library, it's like a catalog, title, abstract, publication data, who has published it, from where you got it, which satellite it has, suppose it's a satellite data, which satellite, which type of camera was used, all that details are actually part of the metadata. So they may be, or mostly they are stored separately. So when I read a file or a digital, say, repository having spatial data, to understand that I have to use this metadata. Otherwise, everything is 0 and 1. So you might be knowing in computer science, our digital format in data is just zeros and ones. Everything is 0 and 1. If I just read a special data file in some other application, it will not understand it. The GIS application will be able to understand it because it will also search the related metadata file and then make sense of it, and then it will render it if it is required or visualized. So there are all these like library catalog element, geographic elements, about projection. I think last lecture there was mention about the projection information, extent information, then what each attribute, what are the types of those attributes. Because even again in the attributes, if I want to describe some person, there could be a name, it could be a character data, which we call as varchar. It could be age, which could be a number. It could be a birth date, which could be a type of date type of. So among attribute data, again, there are different data types which we teach or which we use in our databases. Same way in special data. So all these has to be described, and that is the major job of geospatial metadata. But for why? So why this metadata is required? So I'm just spending first some time on this so that then we will focus more on the spatial data later. So first of all, as I raise this question again here in this, I'm going back to this picture. As I said, try to go from let's say from the data to this real world, I need to collect customer data from somewhere. So my some research organization might be giving it to me. You can consider this as some patient data. From some other government department, I have to go and approach for street data. Another, like say, land survey department, I have to go and take parcels data or plots data. Another department, science and technology, or somewhere, I have to go and take elevation data. Some other TCP department, I have to go and take land usage data. How do I then make sense, as I've said? That means now I'm sharing, I'm getting data from various points and I'm preparing something different, or I'm doing some analysis for setting up bank or setting up hospital or something of that sort, thinking that which will be the best site suitability analysis is called. So in that sense, this data and information sharing will be made possible through metadata, because then I can go through all this metadata and then, if required, some sort of a conversion, some sort of a scaling, some sort of a correction, all that can be done on the data. That is what I was talking about, getting and preparing and putting this data together. So that becomes a huge task, but metadata simplifies it. So it allows you to integrate different data, and then the analysis can be improved. You can have better decisions and you can come up with a policy, just like say hospital policy or whatever. So that's why it is very critical, and in terms of cost and time, metadata is important. Now you don't have to read that. Many times this metadata you are not actually generating on your own. It gets generated when you use a tool, but you need to be aware of this. Okay. So this is something which is very important, and only because of which this 80% of the work which is involved in preparing data can be shortened, and today it can be even brought to even 10%, because today we have come to a stage where all these details which I am talking about are actually not to be done by a researcher like you. So otherwise you will say, oh, as a medical researcher or an epidemiologist, why should I spend time in understanding such tricky issues? So today I can pull data from various sources, and on the fly I can you can create a service or a application, right, or a app. So that is possible, but one need to be aware of this. So now coming back again from the point of view of metadata, which describes what data and how to interpret that data, that is what you can understand that way, is now spatial data models, right? So my job in spatial data model is to represent the geographic space, which is made up of so many different things. And we have seen again and again, we have seen this is a very simplistic model, which I write from, I think, easy manuals and all. We have been using it, but the reality may not be same. It's slightly different, but still, just for our understanding, it's okay, right? So, what is then data model? Like when I say data, like I say, five is a number. Can it be a data? So it has to, when I say as a data, it has to follow certain rules. So if I say five is an integer, and integer, then moment I say integer, that means it is my data type now, data model. It's a numeric system and integer. Then I know what integer can do. Integers can be can take part in addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and comparing, and so on and so on. But certain things they may not be able to. Some operations you cannot apply on integers, right? So, like say now if I say join some, concatenate 5 and 6, that doesn't mean it will become 56 number, right? It will become some character 5 and 6. So each of these data types will have certain rules. So that is what data model means. Like in computer programming, our most important aspect is defining the data. So sometimes our programs are defined as data and algorithm. So you have to define the data and you have to define the algorithm, then your program is ready. So data tells you what is possible, what is not possible on a particular set of data which is given to you, right? Now we need to represent a real life, real world in computer. So we need some sort of a models. So what are the options available for us in the field of spatial data? So the two primary data models which are available to represent the spatial data are raster data model and vector data model. So sometimes they are used separately, sometimes they are used together in application, and many times you have to use them actually together. But we need to know what is raster and what is vector. So coming to raster now. Now you see some image there, right? So the the clear image which you see is actual picture, some picture. Imagine that of some plants or whatever, right? And the the other portion of this particular imagery which you see is some portion of this particular clear image which has been zoomed. Now, what you see over there is when I zoom, and you also do it. Suppose you have your passport size digital photo, and tomorrow you want to, you like say, Dr. Nitin mentioned that I contested election. So suppose you want to contest election, or you want to have some function where a big poster has to be made, and you have given your small photo, and now it will become almost say 5 meter or something like that. What will happen? The resolution which we say will come out, and then your image will not be clear. Precisely, raster model is that. So it is actually stored in bits. It's in some sort of a rows and columns. Okay. This entire image is actually divided in terms of some cells. So rows and columns, and each cell is identified by the row number and the column number. And some value is stored. Sometimes it is 0 and 1 binary. Sometimes it is some sort of a numbers. So the raster data model, which is widely used, uh, uh, and which is very close to what you see, what you do every day, like your digital photographs format, like JPEG, BMP, TIFF, all are actually raster. But when I say raster data model for GIS, it will also have location information. So image is composed of an array of tiny square pixels. That is what we call pixel. Each cell, which is made up of uh, on this particular say image, when I divide it into number of cells, each cell is called a pixel or picture element. Pixel is a short form for that, right? So each of these uniquely colored pixel, when viewed as a whole, combines to form a coherent image. So it is like somebody is in each of those cells. I just put some color, and based on uh, proximity of the other colors on other cells, I get an image. That is another way of looking at it, right? So this is also very attractive, and what is very closer to how the images are rendered. Now you are seeing on your screen, like say what is there on my screen. Now our screen is also raster, right? It is a raster based model, or earlier TV screens are all raster screen. So they just convert the data which comes into particular intensity, and that's how we see all these characters, pictures, everything. So nothing but the picture tube or whatever mechanism which we use now, it has to only generate a particular point of intensity and color at every cell, and then you get a whole image. So raster is that. Now, what are the issues in this? So you can see one is, most of the time these raster cells are square. There is no problem if some people can also use circle, rectangular, this octagonal, all these, but typically these are, each of these cells are of square, okay, equal size pixels. Now, as I said, they are used as building blocks for creating points, line areas. Now you see these two examples which are down. One is, I think, probably an aerial photographs taken by from some flight or something, aeroplane. Other is a digital elevation model, which is actually sort of so what we call as contour type of thing. So it is an image. When I put it into computer and I want to look at it in the 3D, it will then, if something is like say having the highest this, uh, uh, some height will be associated with it. So a 3D image can be created on computer. Now, usual typical problem of converting a reality into a GIS data or spatial data is converting from 3D into 2D. But today we have also capacity that you can actually give a feel of 3D if you want to represent even 3D models, right? And more many of these all these GIS offerings provide this, including grass and other, let's say Oracle and so on, right? So raster data. Now you say, okay, these are the sources like aerial photography, satellite imagery, which I have not shown here, which is infrared or a remote using remote sensing, or it could be some drone captured photos, or this type of thing, or a topo sheet, old topo sheet. If you go to survey office and all, some old map is there. Now I scan that map. Now the scan map also can be considered, if I do geotagging to it and all, that can be considered as a raster map first, right? So as I said, it is square pixels, also sometimes called as grade-based system. Now, each cell, as I said, contains a value which represents the characteristic of the spatial phenomena. It could be, as I said, 0 or 1, but then it will be only binary image. If it is 0 or 1, black and white, nothing else. But other aspects, based on the intensity, based on the value, I can feel the data. The data type for that cell value can be either integer or floating point. So it's also possible to have floating point values. So now suppose this particular imagery, which is actually sort of some land use image, could be satellite image or something of that sort. So if I have this entire image, I need to represent it in a raster in the form of zeros, in the form of say squares, right? Each cell. So a cell can hold any alphanumeric index that represents attribute. It could be quantitative or it could be qualitative also. So if it is elevation, I can put some data like say some floating point number or say real number into this, or in meters or feet or whatever. I can also say, like we have, suppose now what you see, intense red, which you see, could be some sort of a agricultural land. If this was a infrared image, okay, this could be because it could actually reality it will be in the green color on ground. So now I want to whatever which you see in this red is actually agriculture. So wherever the pixel which occurs at this point, that will store the value of a red color. So that's how then the image can be constructed. So now, now the question will be, although I'm not going much into that detail about the resolution. Now, if I cover entire Goa as say one photo or one image, and now I want to store this Goa's image as a special data, raster data, what will the issue? What will the issue in that? Now I have to represent it in terms of rows and columns, right? So I will have some finite number of rows and columns. Suppose I say my rows and columns are 1000 by 1000. And now Goa as a state is first of all is irregular. So now I have to store this Goa, like say, and you won't see any boundary when you capture it from top, right? From the satellite, you won't see Goa's boundary anywhere. So that part again we won't discuss. But now if I want to represent Goa, how much of Goa's land will be represented by each cell? That is the question, right? So that will depend. That's what. So each cell, if I say, if it is a one, each cell, suppose I say represents 1 square kilometer. So that means each cell, whatever is approximating 1 square kilometer of say right now I am sitting here in say Goa University campus. That particular like say 1 square kilometer area or the picture of that will be stored in terms of some digital value in that cell. Okay. And suppose if the area is bigger, 10 square kilometer something, and you are storing 1 square kilometer, so around 10 of the like say pixels will be required to store Bambolim village or Goa University or whatever it is, right? So it is that. That means now what is happening, what is on ground, which is actually very big, because we can't have some sort of a raster digital data file which will be bigger, very big also or very huge, right? We have to do approximation now. So what is captured, what is really on ground, and what is actually stored is an approximation, right? So that is what happens. Sometimes the thing which you want to represent might be smaller than the area which is represented by 1 pixel. A road actually could be smaller than say 1 square kilometer area which is represented by your picture. Then what happens? The rule is points and lines, because point and line, some tourist point or whatever, it could be a park or what, move to the center. So you consider it as part of the center. Now, right now, we need not go into all these details. But this is how approximation happens, and the data, which is our ground data about various things, is stored. And now, typically, then what will happen? This entire thing will be then rasterized. That's called rasterization, right? So, and then we add the let's say the location data also to it, because satellite data, if suppose we capture, it already has that. We have to again do some corrections and also. We are not going to that process right now. So now the question is, so if I store, when in my simplistic model, if I have say 1000 by 1000, do I have to store this 1000 by 1000, say sort of a grid as it is? Like say now many times what we do, if I have some huge files, picture files, we do zipping, right? We do compression. We, like say JPG and all, actually compressing. They are not the actual size. Many times when I want to send, I use this particular format, right? Where you are having information loss, then it is very difficult to get that back in original shape, right? So your resolution. So many times we say high resolution, low resolution. That is what we mean by this, right? So when we do this, people have found some efficiency, because computer scientists always try to find some sort of a better manner. Our job during old, or right from the days of computer science, is actually to look into two aspects: speed, the time and space. Space doesn't mean the GIS space, the space on the computer. Nowadays, both these are actually not a big issue, but still we always try to optimize on space and time. So if I store 1000 by 1000, and sometimes if there is nothing to be stored in that. Suppose my Goa map is very small and I have a bigger 1000 by 1000, and 50% of that is vacant, the boundaries, then there is no point in storing those zero values, right? So we have, just because I'll just rush through this, I will not go through these slides description, but you can understand it from these pictures. So there are three methods to store this. One is this, as I said, suppose you consider this particular, say whatever you see over here, the field squares as Goa, and consider this entire is our actual uh, uh, boundary within which this image is there, but other part is vacant, nothing is there. I don't want to represent anything from there. Now what we will do, as I said, it is rows and cells, right? So we are storing row by row. So suppose I say in first row nothing is there, so I represent it using 0. Second, I mean first row, first cell, right? Column. So 0, then again 0, then 0, then 0, and then 1. Because if you see this 1 is because this fifth one is actually having data which is of interest to me. Same way, row 2, you see columns 5 and 6, there is 1 and 1. Row 3, and this is precisely what I'm saying. Now if you see, my data is actually only here, but I am unnecessarily also storing this. Whether it is 0 or 1, anyway I have to store that. Can I then make something much more efficient? That's what I'm saying. So what we can do is we can then do something called as run length encoding. So what I do is, given the image, I will store only the cell number, and probably if there's a value which is changing, I'll also store the value of that, okay, intensity. But typically, suppose the binary image, black and white, something of that sort, and I want to store only something which is black. So I will store, now you consider storing this file, which is like say these 8 rows into 8 columns. What I'm doing now, I'm storing only those cells which have some data. So in row 1, I have 5. In row 2, I have 5 and 6. In row 3, I have 4 and 6. Row 4, 4 to 6, I mean. 4, 5, 6. So that also I need not mention all the numbers. So a range can be given. 4 to 6, 4 to 6, or 2 to 6, or 2 to 7. So now you can imagine how much, like say, space I save in terms of file size using this type of method, which is called run length encoding of raster data. Now, can I do still better? Which is a very interesting method. This is what when I started, when we discuss this graph coloring algorithms or map coloring, then we think of some sort of data structures. Now you see this. So first take a look at the same image which is there, uh, which you find right now over there. How do I now represent it in a different manner? So even here, what was the problem? Is every row or whatever, I have to store all those data like 5 to 6 or 2 to 7 and so on. Now, now consider this particular that rectangle square. I mean the square which is there 8 by 8. Let's say. What can we do is suppose I fold it. Okay, imagine that this is a paper, and on that paper I have drawn this. You fold it vertically and horizontally. So I divide into 4 quadrants, right? Now again, those quadrants, again you fold, same vertical and horizontal. Again, I get this. This you continue until now you need not do 4 folds again and again for every quadrant. Whichever quadrant is totally, let's say, blank, which is we call as, let's say, non-leaf, which is a leaf node actually, white leaf node, which is totally blank, nothing, then we need not fold further. Same way, whichever quadrant where we get everything filled, which is called as, like say, yellow leaf node in this case, again we have to stop. So now you see it's a recursive, it is a repetitive folding. First you say fold it into 4, then each one of these can be folded. And each one of these has to be folded. Now you see what we do is then we construct something called as a tree. You see tree, which is also be, there's a the importance of tree in environment or in our nature is there, but in computer science also a lot of things are represented using tree, but only thing is this tree is inverted. If you see the tree, you see root is on top, okay, this concept. So I'm trying to simplify this. So this is the root represents the entire this particular file, okay. I divide into 4, so the next 4 say non-leaf node which you see, the square nodes which you see down from where there's a link, represents each of the quarter. So the first one here represents the first quarter. Now what I do, again I divide into 4. See, everywhere there are 4, right? 4 links. That is what it is dividing for. So what I do, when I divide into 4, I see the first quadrant, first 4 cells in row 1 and row 2 and column 1 and column 2, all are white leaf nodes. So I need not again further. So I will only store this information. This entire quadrant is white. There is nothing there. Same way, second down. If I go anti-clockwise, down I come. That is also white. Okay. Third one, which you see, there are 2 cells are filled, 2 cells are open. So again, I have to now divide into 4 because this part I have to divide. So out of these 2 cells, because that is the last level I can go. I can't go further because that is my last unit. Each cell is a unit. So these 2 are not filled. 2 are filled. So then this is then what I need is I need to store this as a data structure. It's called quad tree. Quad means 4. Like so I divide every stage it into 4. So what happens is if I realize that I have to store only those things which actually with the address like which have the data, others I need not, and I know anyway I recreate it, I know that is a chord structure, and I will fill the other things with blank when I actually render the image. But when I store it, I will store only this information. This is one of the best method of storing the raster image, right? So this is also sometimes called as a tessellation, quad tree tessellation. This effect of dividing into 4 and going down and dividing it until you get either only blank or only or filled thing. Okay, so you can then think of lot of interesting data structures of this sort are there in the, now why raster okay, at this point, let me just take a slight break because I think uh, I've been talking for a long time. Anybody has any question on this?
There are two hands raised, Jishnu
Yeah.
and Bhagya. Yeah, you can unmute
So
and you can ask question.
yeah, yeah, I think better so that
Yeah, Vishnu want to ask, or anyone has any question? You can
or should I
unmute
go
and
ahead and yeah.
yeah, I think there are no questions. Yeah,
Okay.
we can continue. How many more slides, sir? We are at
Uh,
7:57. It's 7:57 on
yeah.
my
So
clock.
mm,
Yeah, we are 7:57 on my clock.
so yeah. So what we'll do is what I'll do is I'll cover only the raster model and vector model, and then we won't go ahead. Okay. So I think that time will be enough because now almost we have finished the raster model as such, and we'll see some operations. Okay.
Okay, sir. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, we have discussed this part. Now, one advantage is raster graphics is well known. Now, only thing you need to add to that is the location data that could be done, right? A lot of analysis also can be done on raster data. So we will discuss this ahead afterwards. But as the raw raster files are very large, still after doing all these optimization, still it can be a problem. So and as I said, when we represent some 5 square kilometer data into 1 pixel, you lose lot of information, right? So that is a issue over here. One of the let's say major concern. Okay, so other things I will not go right now. So then, what is the other option? So here comes the role of vector data models. Now, when we say vector data models, these are mathematical constructs and very efficient using as I said for graph coloring also they use these techniques. So here the basic concept is something called a point xy coordinate, and then these points are connected to other points using which we create lines. Then these lines can be connected further or extended, and you can then create some other aspects of your special world using polygons. So basically, if you see point, line, and polygon, these three things are actually part of the vector data model, and the basic building block is a point. When I connect 2 points, just like this is geometry. When I connect 2 points, you get a sort of a segment, and when you connect multiple points, you get a line. So same concepts, and there are in Oracle and all. Then we have various versions of all this, but basically it is point, line, and polygon. Okay, so this part can be then stored in the database or in the files. Okay, so this is what is done. And then other attribute data which you talked about, remember there are three parts: special data, attribute data, which defines the characteristics of any person or whatever, and the metadata. So metadata also will have some role into this, but we are concentrating on this. So now if you see this particular picture which you see over there, there will be points which are also sometimes called as nodes. Okay, nodes are some sort of a junction. The lines can be represented, can be used to represent roads. The polygons can be used to represent the plots or whatever, some sort of a bounded area. And all these can be built using points. That's what I'm saying. So point basically is a zero-dimensional object, and but it has locations. Okay, it is not in some direction or say sort of a dimension to it. Okay, so it can be used to represent building, well, power pole, sample locations, hospital, whatever it is. If I'm not interested in the entire hospital, but I want to show where is the hospital, that can be done. Okay. So points have only the property of location. Other type of point features are called a node and vertex. Now, node is something we will come to that again, and vertex is where you have a band in a line. So, because lines are constructed using points, within that we call them either node or vertex. We'll come to that part. Line again, as I said, is made up of uh, uh, points, and sometimes also called as arc. we can only will not go into all these details. I can share these slides with you. Then the polygon are the two-dimensional features created by multiple lines that look back. So that means if I start with a particular line from some starting point, when I come back to that, that becomes a polygon. Okay. So there's a simple idea, and then there's a concept of area for that. Now, when we do this, suppose when we represent reality using point, line, and polygon, there are many other issues. That means what we are storing is only xy points related to spatial aspects. Okay, and based on how I define in, like say, in our commercial software, like say, or whatever software we use, like say Oracle or something, I will define road as a line. I will define, like say, garden, big garden, suppose there are field as a polygon. So I can define this data or something as a tourist point, as a point. Okay, so that is what is done, but that is not enough. With only the geometrical part of point, line, polygon, I may not get a very accurate picture. So there is something also which is again a mathematical concept called topology. Topology is actually, in simple terms, what topology means is the relationship between different objects which are part, like say point, line, polygons, and how they are related to each other. Now, once I define this topology, what can be done is, even if I scale my model into some other bigger, say, dimension, or I do something else to it, I project it on something else, the topology that related topology is actually relation. It is relative, so that always is maintained. Okay, so that is what topology means, and why it is required is, we'll see this. So there is something, some concepts in topology called as connectivities. Connectivity, that is where the now are this node point becomes a node. Now, see, arc node. So if you see this diagram here, I can define the arc node list. Arcs are the building blocks of these lines. So each of these arc, let's say if I say arc A which is defined here, the start point from node to node. These are mentioned here. So I mention each of these, like say B is 14 to 17 and so on, right? So that is defining the connectivity. So now based on that, I know that A is the start point. I mean, 16 is the start point for A, 17 is the start point for B. Okay. So that is one connectivity aspect. Second is area definition. So this comes in the picture when I create a polygon. Okay. So polygon, let's say now polygon B. Polygon B is bounded through 1, 3, and 5 arcs. Okay, so I have an arc called 1, I have another arc called 3, and another arc called P. Now, one something which is mentioned outside this data boundary, this A is actually the universal polygon. I will not go into details of that, but many times, sometimes we have called as the area of interest, AOI, and overall bounding thing is there. So A is that. Okay, so now B is adjacent to A. B is also adjacent to D. B is adjacent to C. So all these informations are kept actually using topology, using all these three concepts: connectivity, area definition, and contiguity. Contiguity provides or is based on something called as the directions. Okay, so if you see now, because that is where the role of vector also comes into picture. There is a direction. So there is arrow pointing. So if you see arc will tell you from where it's which polygon it connects to which other polygon. So, or sorry, what is to the right and what is the left. Now, when I say D, suppose now imagine that you are owner of a plot and your other friend is owner of an adjacent plot. Now, if you are interested in creating a vector model of your plot, what you will do, you will draw all these boundaries, right? These boundaries have to be drawn. Now, your friend also will try to draw. Now, both these guys are actually drawing what? There is one common boundary here, right? They did not do it. Just like when we want to construct a compound wall, can I construct two compound wall, that one I will construct and other my friend will construct? No, it will be common. So that is what actually is defined. Like say now arc 1. to this arc 1, left side polygon is A, right side polygon is B. So that means A and B are adjacent to each other. That information is preserved, and that's why you need not store B. When you store B polygon and when you store D polygon, you do not have to store this arc, this particular arc, like say 5 twice. You will store arcs and you will store this information. That is how the image can be then later on rendered afterwards. Okay. So that is what is actually contiguity. So topology tells you what is to the left, what is to the right, and so on. Okay. So when you create, then sometimes there could be some mistakes in creating these polygons. So like when you don't join, as I said, start point and end point of a polygon is same. By mistake, sometimes if you don't do it in digitization, there is a problem. Sometimes this particular node is not extended. Node means a junction. Now suppose this particular with the figure which is titled undershoot. Imagine this particular line which is coming is another road, okay, and then it has to join here as a junction so that person can go to any of these three roads. But now if I don't do it, it will not become a junction, right? It's called undershoot. So sometimes there is a technique by when you use GIS software, I will define a threshold. That means if I don't have fine control on drawing this, suppose I'm drawing this, creating this using some digitizer tablet, I will define a distance, something 2 points separated within say 0.5 millimeter or whatever should be joined. That's called snapping. That can be done automatically by the tool. But sometimes by mistake, I may leave it this way. So this is undershoot. Sometimes overshoot. Sometimes this point should have been on this line here. A junction is coming here. So these are dangling pointers. Sometimes what we have to do again is like, suppose there is a railway track going and there is an underpass. So that means they are not connected to each other. They are not node. They are still a normal lines. Okay, that also is possible. So topology importance is like, especially if I just draw only vector models and there is no topology, it will be difficult for me to do one of the very important aspect called network analysis. Like I want to know finding the best route, how to go from one place to another. Is it possible or no? To measure accurately, how to do it. All these actually topology helps. We will not go into those details now. So vector model is much more efficient in terms of size because we have to only store XY points. We are not storing the pixel data and all. It is more pleasing when you render it. It is more accurate. It is like many times when you see your GIF rendering or say PNG data, some photographs, much better is PNG data, right? Sometimes, right? So same way, when you stretch, the raster data gets, like say, it actually spoils the aesthetics of it, right? So this is much more compact and lot of special analysis can be done using vector. But sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you will only have a raster data. You have to use that. Now, where do I store it? So we come to the part of the storage. Now we have seen the models. Models are mathematical or say conceptual entities. When I want to store it, I need some file and a very structured part of that is called a DBMS system. So I will not go into all the points over here, but for us, typically a DBMS, those who are not familiar with, say, some DBMS like Oracle or say Access, which are there on your as part of your studio, let's say office setup and all, or database systems store data, just like Excel. You can imagine the Excel spreadsheet. Database goes much more or much beyond that, which also has a metadata, and it will link many files. So one example of a DBMS table is this: name, group number, and occupation. So I can create these columns and I can create these rows. So table, or actually I'm not talking about many other database. I'm only talking about relational database systems. I will have rows and columns again. The rows are the data and the columns are the attributes. So now if you see these attributes, they are all non-special attributes like name, group number, occupation. This is what typically we use in data. Now imagine, suppose I say his address, his location. if I add it, can I add this as a next column here? That is the question. So can our relational database management systems, which have flat tables, can now they store special data? The answer is yes. Okay. So relational databases have evolved. They have done a lot of optimizations, and typically, as I said, although I said that you should imagine a database as something called Excel sheet. Excel, what happens is one large sheet that can be divided based on lot of optimization rules, which we call as normalization, into smaller tables, and RDBMS again is mathematical based theory, so I can join them. I will not go into all those things, but given a bigger table called employee table, I can break it or decompose it into two. These are normal data, right? Attribute data. So where I have employee number and employee name, and other side I have the department number. Because see here, this person belongs to somehow two department. Maybe he's assigned. Now you can't have multi-value data this way in databases. Okay, in today's databases again it's allowed. Same way, there could be a lot of other redundancies which I'm not going to. But typically today's applications which use databases, all applications use databases. They are divided into hundreds of tables. Okay, and then whenever they are required, they are joined using some operation. So that operation is called join, and I will not go into that mechanism right now. But then, how do I realize all this? This is fine to look at it as pictorial. How do I create this structure? How do I define it? What language is available to me? That is called SQL. So probably, if you are not you may never be required to use many of these things, but probably sometimes you may have to write a SQL query to extract the data, whatever data you need, or what operation you do on a like say your package or your solution that actually results in the SQL query, which query returns a result. So I ask questions, that is called a query. Now, how a query is constructed is using a clause. So structured query language is a standard which defines how to extract data from non-special attributes. The additional component which are added to it is called as a special SQL. So it's a standard. So any RDBMS which you use, whether it's Oracle, Postgres, or whether it's Access or any other, all of them will use the same, let's say, structure of selecting data. So these clauses are used to define that. So these clauses are select. These are the basic. There are many other. Select, from, where, order by, and having. So we will just see this. Let's say if this is a data in table. Okay, this is non-JS. Okay, just to understand the table. So you have last name, first name, street number, street name, city. These are all non-JS data. How do I extract information? Suppose I want uh, all the people who are staying in a city called Upland. So these clauses which I told you about, select, from, where, I use them, and two of them are mandatory, that select and from. So select star means select all the information, entire columns, all the column. Like I want to know his last name, I want to know the first name, I want to know the street number, I want to know the street name, I want to know the city and state of person who stays in city called Upland. So you can see this how we actually ask this query. Select star from where? From this table. The name of this table is example table. This data containing data. Then I say I apply a criteria that is called conditional this where clause. Where city is equal to Upland. Same way I can say select star from example table where name or first name is equal to Edwin. Then I'll be able to locate this guy and all this data will come. So this is the resulting table. Okay. So this is how relational databases work. Now if I add, as I said, I add special columns to it, like saying this fellow stays at a particular location. His house is somewhere else. So now I can find out, I can again fire a query saying select so and star from example table where some special location is so and so XY point I can give, and I can search that. That is what can be done. So another example of SQL, which is again just searching based on the state, and I want only select only the last name. I'm not selecting the entire data. Okay. So now if I apply it for special 5 more minutes, I'll take. if I apply this for spatial data, how do I then work on it? So there are, now see, I have, as we said, vector data model has point, line, and polygon. What we can do is, suppose I want to know, given a particular point, in which area it falls, okay, when finding features that interacts with point features. So which road passes through a particular, say, garden, or say bridge, or whatever, right? So these questions can be asked, and we can then find the answer. Again, I can find features that interacts with line. I can find features that interact with polygon. Okay, polygon with polygon and all. So this can be done. So we will see this type of thing. So given a point, find out which road comes to that, or given a, I want to know where a petrol pump is there and how to go. So that can be done given a point and a line. Okay, so that is possible. So that is I'll show you the intersect again. Now buffering. So given this, suppose I want to set up this hospital here, and I say this hospital will serve for 5 kilometer radius. So I can, then I want to see within this 5 kilometer which villages come. That's called buffering. So this buffering can be done using a special SQL. So given this point, I can create a buffer. Now suppose I have a road, okay, and within the in that road, I don't want any construction in both the sides with 5 meter. I can then create a buffer of 5 kilometers, just like say CRZ and all we do. So I have a high tide line. Now 50 meter from there, nothing can be done. So I want to define or show that, highlight that. So it will create a buffer of that and mark it. So that can be done. So this is how buffering operation is done. Sometimes this contains operation can be done. So uh, let's say given this point, in which particular say plot it is part of, or which city it is part of, which city is part of which say state, all that can be decided. So you have abilities to do this, okay, and not only for one single feature. Now this is also multiple layer feature. So, as I said, I will just explain what is this, what are these various operations. So, these are, remember, whether you understand it or no, but these are the basic building blocks based on which you get answers to any query. It will be based for a very large data set also, but some of the most basic things are this, like say union. What I do, I combine the special aspects of two objects, this plus this. So suppose if this is some rectangular object is there and a circular object. When I say union, they are combined, and I get a new geometry or a new vector which is part of this. Okay. So union actually like just now, just the way you study set theory where union interacts in there. So intersects operation will only give what is common to both. Only that much say special data will be then generated as a result. Just like see how I got this result, like give the last name of a person. Same way, the result of a special query is a new special object. Okay. So that is what we are getting here. It creates a new object, which may really not be there. Okay. But I will represent now that area. Symmetrical differences. So this is like say this actually includes all those things which are not part of the overlap. Okay. Now identity means part of this particular first thing. Okay, which do not overlap with the part of this. Only that is selected, including this. Then clipping is I can generate a smaller image from the bigger image. Many times I need it. Suppose I have a entire India as a country. I want only Goa related image so that I can then do some analysis only to Goa. So I can clip it. Okay, I can also remove some part. So suppose in some from the map, some part now is not does not belong to me or to my property. So I can re-erase it. Okay, I can also split. So just like clip, which is internal, I can split the imagery or say data into four different options. So these are in a nutshell what we have seen till now is the vector data and the raster data. Raster is actually in terms of rows and cells, rows and columns, and each cell represents some information about that. So it's an approximation of that. Vector model uses three concepts, like say point, line, and polygon to represent whatever is there. So both these, most of the commercial offerings or the software allow all these things, so that if your imagery, you can load it. If you have created some digitized data using some other manner, or you have used GPS to collect some data, then that can be used to create a vector model. All this is possible with the current special say databases. Then this is related to what we were talking about, metadata. The metadata, which we discussed first, which is part of your special data, can be probably useful to read the data by that particular tool. But now suppose I want to make it available to everybody. Like tomorrow I have a requirement that I want to do some study of an epidemic, but I don't want to create all these maps. I only have data about my patients, but other things I want to import or pull from somewhere else. So all these services are nowadays possible. So that is called as SDI, Spatial Data Infrastructure. There's a standard. All countries also follow this. Like we have NSDI in India, we have National Spatial Data Infrastructure. United States has USGI or something. Everybody then implements it, and they have their own internal standard also. But if at global level they want to cooperate, again they have to be compatible, all these things. So that is called SDI, and probably a lot of wonderful work can be done by imposing this technology, policies, standards, and that again is a subject of actually further another lecture, where how you can pull from servers which are providing these as services. Like so, you have something called a web map service. Entire map, a rendered map, can be integrated, embedded in your application. I have a web application and I want now Goa's map. So I can request. I will not create it. I send some service request and I get it in my map. I can also get a feature which is called WFS, and I can inquire. A lot of things are available which right now I can't go into details. But based on this, today you don't have to create all this data. A lot of this data can be pulled and you can put it together. And then, like say now, suppose you want to create some sort of a Swiggy type of application. Now you don't have to create the map. People will integrate the Google map or whatever it is there, because it might be compliant with SDI. And that's how then everybody can work with it. So that is what is actually the underlying data structure. Probably I've zoomed through a lot of material, but let me end at this, and I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking out special time and for
Sorry.
investing a lot of your energy, time, and being part of this endeavor. And we were joined at a time, more than 30 people joined us and they listened to your lecture, and it has been recorded. And I will be ending the recording right now.